Welcome to the Simpler Business Podcast, where we talk about ways to do what you love and serve your people in a way that brings you income and freedom. I'm your host, Marissa Roberts. Join me as I chat with my favorite entrepreneurs about how they simplify their biz so that you can simplify yours. Want to start a podcast but worried you'll be competing with too many others to get noticed? I Googled it the other day, and according to the link that I'm going to leave in the show notes, there are over 5 million podcasts with more than 70 million episodes between them as of February 2023. Spotify alone has 5 million podcast titles on its platform. But there are also 8 billion adults in the world. And podcasting is getting bigger and bigger every year, with 424 million listeners worldwide in 2022, and currently it's at 464 million in 2023, and we're only at the start of March. Podcasting is getting bigger and bigger over time. So yes, each year there will be more podcasts, and there will also be more listeners. Why shouldn't your podcast be an option for them? Can you compete with the big names right from the start? Maybe not, but you don't need to. There's plenty of room for niched content. While there are a large number of podcasts out there already, lots of them are focused on very specific topics or cater to niche audiences. This means there's still plenty of room for new podcasts to emerge that cover unique areas of interest. In fact, there may even be more potential for growth in those niche areas, as they offer a way for podcasters to build a dedicated audience who are really passionate about that particular topic. Whether you niche down or not, if you have something to share and can help or entertain people with your content, you're halfway there, and your podcast is absolutely worth your time and effort. But what will really set you apart from the majority of podcasts is whether you're willing to do it consistently. Commit to 12 months of weekly podcasting, and you'll be more consistent than 80% of the podcasts already out there, according to my Spotify Wrapped report. Share your episodes on social media, invite guests onto your show so you can help each other reach new people, and you'll be amazed at where you'll be in a year. Now, the easiest way to be consistent is to make the process simple and enjoyable. And in my program, The Simple Podcast, I show you how to set up your podcast for free and release your episodes weekly with minimum tech or editing needed. Plus, my team helps you out if you get stuck. I like to have templates to make processes flow easier. I like to show people how to book guests with almost no effort at all and get themselves on other people's podcasts effortlessly too. And that way you can grow your audience faster. You can get your podcast up and running this year with about an hour of effort each week. And I also have a really cool little quick start guide. So if you really push for time and you just want to know the steps to take without all the background and context and everything like that, you can just do that. You just follow the pathway without having to figure it out for yourself. What about starting a podcast when you have no audience? Well, starting a podcast is exciting, but I understand it can feel like a really big mountain to climb, considering you're starting from scratch with no established audience. Now, the good news is, even when you're starting from zero, with a little strategic planning and commitment, you can build a loyal following and grow an engaging podcast that really resonates with your ideal clients. So here are my tips on how to grow your podcast following from day one. Define your niche and target audience. Just like we mentioned before, niching down helps you gather like-minded people really quickly and easily. So before you start recording, you want to make sure your podcast topic is something that you really enjoy, something that you love, and something that you can help people with, whether that's solving a problem for them or helping them feel better and entertaining them. Something that's going to appeal to your ideal clients and customers. You can podcast about any topic you like. So what do you find easy to talk about that can help your potential listeners? Where do those potential listeners hang out online? What are their interests and needs? What kind of questions would they ask you? These sorts of points will help you create content that will attract new listeners and resonates with your existing audience, and it will also give you insights on which social media platform that you should focus on first when promoting your podcast. Next, we want to make sure your podcast title is really clear. You want to know that when a potential listener comes across your podcast, they know immediately from reading just your podcast name that your show will be helpful or entertaining to them. My podcast is about finding ways to simplify your business. So the Simpler Business Podcast, it's a very clear name that portrays that. Now, if I called it the Marissa Show, there's no reason for new people to want to tune in. A few more examples. There's a podcast called the Puppy Training Podcast. And guess what that's about? It's all about training puppies. The True Crime Conversations Podcast is all about true crime. There's a podcast called the Gymnastics Growth Show, and that's all about getting better at gymnastics. And the Smart Passive Income Podcast is, you guessed it, all about building passive income streams. Make sure your title is clear. People will know that your podcast is for them when they first stumble across it. Next, we want to think about planning your episodes. If you plan your episodes in advance, it'll help you stay organized and ensure that you're delivering consistent content. So decide on a format for your podcast. You could go with a solo show, you could do interviews with guests, you could have a co-host, you could do a mix of the two. I do some solo episodes and some interviews. And then you want to plan out your topics and your guests in advance. When you do this sort of planning, it can help you find the time and ability to batch record your episodes. And that way you can batch record, batch edit if you need to, and then release them, schedule them to release them consistently each week. Let's talk about promoting your podcast. Keep your podcast promotion simple. That way you're not going to get overwhelmed and you can keep sharing it consistently. Submit it to podcast directories like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Share it on social media, embed it in your blog post, and ask other podcast hosts in your niche if they'd like to do a guesting swap. So you appear on their show and they appear on your show and you both get in front of each other's community. And don't forget to share your podcast with friends and family too when you first launch. The more listens, ratings, and reviews you get in the first few days of your podcast, the easier it is to climb to the top 100 charts and get your podcast in front of more people. And if your friends share your podcast on their social media, now you're on the radar of a whole new potential audience. In my Simple Podcast program, I share the social media posts I wrote asking my friends and family to listen, rate, and review to support my new project. My program students simply swipe the template and tailor it to suit their own podcast and personality, so they can use them in their launch week too for more listens without adding hours and hours to their week, having to write out their own posts. Next, you want to engage with your audience. If you want to build a loyal following, you need to talk with your listeners, not at your listeners. Encourage and respond to comments and questions on social media. Ask for feedback and invite listeners to leave reviews. This will help you build a community around your podcast and keep your listeners coming back for more. Offer incentives. You can offer incentives to your social media followers and email list subscribers to encourage them to listen and share your podcast. You might want to offer a free ebook, a discount code for a passive product, or some exclusive content for subscribers as a thank you for listening to and sharing your podcast with other people. I think the biggest lesson to learn is that consistency is key. Most podcasters struggle with consistency and they release a few episodes and then they tend to disappear for months. Now, if you record and schedule your podcast episodes and release one every week for 12 months, you will be ahead of the game. Keep your podcast production process simple so you don't get too overwhelmed with it. We have a bunch of tech and process tips and hacks that make podcasting a smooth and simple experience for everybody. From process flows to templates for show notes and guest outreach, I manage my podcast in less than an hour each week, and you can do that too. If you're ready to start your own podcast the easy way this year, check out my Simple Podcast program. I'll leave a link in the show notes so you can check it out. And if you have any questions on starting your podcast the easy way, come and chat with me on Instagram at Marissa Roberts Official. You can ask any question you like, and I will get back to you as soon as I see it. I hope you found these ideas helpful, and I will see you in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Simpler Business Podcast. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts. There's a link in the show notes to make it nice and easy for you, just the way we like it. If you're ready to simplify and scale your business, you can get started with my free audio class at marissaroberts.com. See you next time.